Hello, book review time. What books? Affogato and London Fog by E.M. Lindsey. So, Affogato, that one was actually the Definitely Readers Book Club book for November. But I actually did read both of the BrewBiz series by E.M. Lindsey books in November. So, this review is for both. Now, both books have deaf and hard of hearing representation and LGBTQIA representation. And I will say that I did feel like the LGBTQ representation was really good. I don't really have a lot to say about that part, but most of the characters were queer or trans or lost my train of thought. There were some discussions regarding how you may not always fit specifically in a gender norm or a sexuality norm, and how you can be part of something and not really still fit perfectly, but it's kind of how you feel, who you are, and can be what you want to identify as. So I liked that part. I felt like it was a really good representation. The deaf and hard of hearing representation, the author did have a deaf sensitivity reader, and I felt like it was a lot to review on that. In the book, there was deaf and hard of hearing representation. There was a lot of things that you're like, oh, yeah, that's right. And we do that. And then I was like, no, not really experienced that, but I've seen it before, yeah. And it's almost all the characters were deaf or hard of hearing. Some had cochlears, some had hearing aids, some had no devices, some were generationally deaf, or had hearing loss later in life. There was a wide variety of deafness in the deaf spectrum, and so I really enjoyed that. It was really enjoyable to see that in the book. They did follow brothers so far. So in Affogato, we actually followed Caleb, and he was born deaf, his to hearing parents, and he had a cochlear implant that failed. And so he was raised deaf, he did sign language, he went to a deaf school, and all of these things. And then in the second book, you followed Wren, who was also born deaf. He did have a cochlear, a successful cochlear, and so he was raised hearing. And he did not learn sign language until later, like in college. And he didn't really feel like he fit into the hearing world or really the deaf world. He didn't often feel like he was deaf enough, and he felt like his brother didn't really understand his struggles since he could, quote unquote, hear, and all of these kinds of things. And I really did enjoy that different perspectives of both of the books. And I did feel like Caleb had a lot of deaf pride, which, okay, that's good. Sometimes that's really good. And then I felt like sometimes it was not great. And he ignored his brother's struggles or his love interest struggles. Who did have struggles learning to use sign, and he did often use his voice. And so I thought that the book felt very realistic in that way. But there was a negative about the books. This is why I'm not going to really rate it 4 or 5 stars, because it was was very spicy. Very. I did not expect this when we voted for this book choice. No, I did not expect so much sex. And so I just felt like the deaf representation, the autistic representation, the LGBTQIA representation, and the emotional depth of the stories were just overshadowed by the sex and spice. So, sadly, and honestly, the last third of the books could really just be, okay, we're done, because there was no real plot after the love interest really got together. So yeah, that. So now is my favorite part of sharing some quotes. Now from Affogato, here are some quotes. They were family, after all. They wouldn't just die for each other. They'd live for each other. Keep people around you who are willing to be patient for you, and remind people of your worth who aren't. And then there's a really funny part where he said that deaf people gossip worse than a Victorian knitting circle, which was just funny. And then last one, he and Ravi never lost anything. They'd just been forced to try and gain something that didn't belong to them, that wasn't meant for them. And then quotes from London Fog. The right person won't see you as hard work. They'll see you as worth it. He once again appreciated living in a deaf house and existing in deaf space that didn't have the expectation. He pushed himself through discomfort for others. So, last thing. Technically, there was an author's note that did say, it is sign language. This is their main communications. It's going to be used with normal quotes. And I struggled with that because yes, it is their first language. It is their natural language. And I get it. I understand. But some of the characters did speak and some of them signed. And there was not a lot of tags, and you didn't know who was specifically signing, because one of the characters, Bodhi, later he did start picking the signing up better and using it more, but before that he didn't use it, and it wasn't slanted, and it was just hard to understand sometimes. But I did really enjoy how the ASL slang was shown in the book, and so I did enjoy that part. Okay, so my website has my full review, and if you don't mind spice and sex scenes, and you want to read a book that has deaf representation and LGBTQ representation and autistic representation, it's a good book for that part. I would say 3. If you're okay with spice, 4. Yeah, sure. I just felt like the representation was overshadowed by the spice. Unfortunately, that is my personal opinion. Okay. Anyways, happy reading.